Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome Zadie, Bobby, hello, Marina, Arthur, and Judd. Good to see you. I hope you're continuing to have Refuah Shalema. It's good to have you on with us. And thank you guys for your flexibility. And it'll be 7 o'clock in general going forward. I just had a simcha that I was asked to go to, so I went there. Now I'm back, and now we can start. We find ourselves on Yud Beis Amud Aleph. We are on 12b, and as a reward from yesterday, because not yesterday, last week, when we had a lot of math and calculations and numbers. So today we're going to have actually some really fun Agadah, particularly at the end. The Gemara is returning back to its regular scheduled programming, which is going through Megillah in order of the Psukim and sharing different tidbits of drushos with us for how Chazal interpreted the Megillah. So for those looking at a regular text of Gemara, we are on the third wide line at the end. For those who have an art scroll, I would imagine, I think it would be the second page in art scroll if I had to wager, somewhere around there. We're starting with Chel Paras Umadai Hafar Tamim. To take a moment to find it, the two dots, it's a new section. Anyone need help? Okay, let's jump in. So we are continuing on through the Megillah. Chel Paras Umadai Hafar Tamim, referring to Chel Avir, the Air Force of soldiers, of Paras Umadai, who were the officers. So you have to remember that Persia was I don't know what you call it, a conglomerate of different nations from beforehand. It was a successor to the Babylonian Empire. It's made up of different sub-nationalities. In fact, I think someone could correct me if I'm wrong. Historically, that may have been part of its downfall, was that there's actually, I was watching some history on Persia, that at one point the goal was to just allow every ethnicity and every region to govern based on its own customs. But then there was a push that actually to unify and standardize the Persian government. Anyway, so how do we understand this pasuk about Paras and Madai? Because on the one hand, it indicates that they are officers, but it writes,
You're freezing. We can't hear you.
No? Any better? Looks like the connection's good.
Nope.
Nope, still not hearing?
Bad connection.
Anyone else having issues?
Yeah.
Haven't anyone hear me? Speak up if you hear me.
Right now, yes. Before it was totally garbled.
Okay. Okay, since we're back, let's make use of the time while we still have a connection then. Okay. I don't get it. Are they officers or are they kings? Amarava, they made up, they stipulated with each other. So if the king will come from your nation, then the governors will come from the other one. If from us comes the king, then you'll get the governors. If you get the king, then we get the governors. Okay, good. Some of these drushos we're going to learn. I mean, I'm sure you learn all the commentaries on Agadah. There are deeper meanings, but on the baseline shot level, some of these are just quick little quips, and then some of these are going to be more drawn out, a little bit lengthier. And so this is just a quick one. Next, Baroso is Osher Kvod Malchuso. So he's showing off all of his wealth, the kavod of his kingship. Amarav Yosi Barchanina Melami Shalavash Big Day Kahuna. This indicates that Achashverosh brought out the big day. They wore the big day Kahuna. Siv Hacha Yakar Tiferes Gedula. So he used the word Tiferes in the context over here in the Megillah. Uksiv Hasam, and in the Torah, when it refers to the garments of the Kohen Gadol, it says Lechavod Ulstifares, the same word. This is a Gezerah Shava of sorts that indicates to us that he was witness. Tifares is codename for the big day Kahuna, the garments of the Kohen Gadol. Next, Velos Hayamim Ha'ela, when these days became filled, when they came to completion. Rav Ushmuel. So Rav and Shmuel have a dispute as to how to understand what Achashverosh did. Let me fill in the rest of it. What Achashverosh did was when he threw his party, he first threw a party for people who did not live in Shushan, and then he made a special one just for the residents of Shushan. So the question is, was this a wise move on his part, or was it a misjudgment to prioritize the out-of-towners over the in-towners? That is the question they ask at YU. Actually, just okay. Khan Omar, Melch Bikeachaya. One of them says that Achashverosh was shrewd. He knew what he was doing. The other one says, no, it's like what we learned in a previous week, that Achashverosh is not that intelligent. Maybe he had a lot of money. He bought his way into the kingship. But again, he's just a tipesh. The one who says that Achashverosh was a knowledgeable person, he was a wise person, he knew what he was doing, so it makes sense that he would first bring in the out-of-towners. Why? Because you always have a chance to be Matthias, the in-towners. I will give a mushal now that hopefully I don't get in trouble for. It's like when you're trying to form a service. So if you only have certain people that come from out of town 3 days a year to the shul, do you try to appeal to the people who are the in-towners, to the people who are the out-of-towners? So you have to make a cheshbon.
You're frozen.
Losing you.
Frozen. I guess somebody didn't think that was a good mushel.
So Kufa, this is the question. This is the question here in the Gemara, which is, do you take the opportunity that there are people who are coming in only a little bit? Do you try your best to take that little time together, or do you say
you were totally frozen? We did not hear.
You know what? It's probably better off you didn't.
Probably.
Okay.
But you're frozen again.
I guess we have to make sure to zoom at the shul. It shows that I have 4 out of 5 colors. That's the weird part. Let me see. Let me turn off my phone using the Wi-Fi. No, my phone's not using the Wi-Fi. I don't know what's using all the Wi-Fi. Okay. Can you hear me now? No? All frozen? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. The one that says Achashverosh was a tipesh. He was a fool. He should have actually been the car of the in-towners first. Because of the out-of-towners rebelled against him, at least the in-towners would stand by him. Great. So again, machlokes if Achashverosh really knew what he was doing or not. Next, Shalu Talmidavis Rashbi. Here is a fundamental question. So the students are asked him as follows. Why do the haters of Israel, we've seen this many times, it's a euphemism. Why did the Jewish people deserve to be destroyed? Now we did tshuva, we fasted, and Hashem gave us the Yeshua in the end. But originally, we did something that Hashem was gozer, that the Jewish people should be annihilated. What did we do that was so terrible to be deserving of it? Amalhem, Imrantem. Hashem says, I'm not going to spoon feed it to you. You tell me what you think. Yeah, right. That's what teachers do all the time. They say, "What do you guys think?" Engage the audience. I'm not so good at that. I know. They said, "Oh, because they went to be nehena from the Suda of Achashverosh." Now, notice. I'm going to explain in a moment. What's the issue with being nehena? It should say they didn't eat from the Suda of the Rasha. So, for this, we have asked the following question. What was at the Suda of Achashverosh that was so terrible? You know what? I'm gonna pull a page from Rav Shimon bar Yochai's playbook. I'm gonna ask you guys what you think. What do you think was so bad about going to the Suda of Achashverosh?
Did he have treifa there?
Oh, very good. So Phyllis knows I got a bunch of opinions down over here. The Maharsha addresses this. So the question the Maharsha asked is, okay, there was treifos, there was nevela over there was non-kosher food. But most non-kosher food that you'll eat it might be an Isser in the Torah to eat it, but you're not a chayiv misa for eating non-kosher food, right? So the question is, maybe they committed a terrible sin, but not one that they be chayiv misa for, right? Good question. So there's a few answers that are given. One is, look at the words again, where it says, Mipnei shenehenu misudas shal sarasha. Notice it say, Mipnei she'achlu misudas shal sarasha, because they ate from the Suda. What does nehene allude to? That they had hana, that they had some sort of pleasure? But first,
it was against Hashem, that it was they did a dafka.
Oh, good. We'll get there in a moment. Yeah, we'll get there in a moment. So what does nehene refer to? Nehene refers to, the Medrash Rabbah tells us on Esther, it refers to Gilei Arayis, it refers to sexual impropriety. And once they drank and they became drunk, we're going to see this in the Gemara soon, all sorts of crazy things were going down at the Suda. So it wasn't inherently the non-kosher food that they ate that would make them deserving of destruction, but it was bad in of itself, and it was a gateway to worse things. That's what the word nanu comes to indicate. Another suggestion is given by Sefer Rosh Yosef. Wow, that's an interesting name. So he suggests, based on the Maharsha, that actually they were eating chalev and dam, forbidden fats and blood, that actually carry with them an isser kares, divine excision, which is a form of, it's not a death penalty that the Beis Din Shalmata gives, but it's one that the Beis Din Shalmaila, the heavenly court, will give. Now, how does kares differ from Misa B'dei Shemayim? There's discussion about exactly, maybe it's amount of years, maybe it's a call for the next world versus this world. There's different opinions on that. But that makes more sense. If the issue is non-kosher food, I eat pig, pig's bad, but I shouldn't die because I ate pig. So if you ate dam and chalev, it's a little bit more understandable. Still, that's hard. It's not satisfying. So this gets to, I think, Phyllis, what you were alluding to. Another suggestion that he gives is that what did we just say was going on at the Sudas Achashverosh? We didn't even get to everything yet. There was crazy stuff going down there. But what did we note at the beginning? What was something that was very egregious that was being done there? He took the garments of the Kohen Gadol. So he took the Kaelin of the Beis HaMikdash, like the last week also, and he put them out on display. He was actively being mavazeh. He was actively disrespecting HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Beis HaMikdash and all the Kalim from there, wearing the big day kahuna like it's Purim, like, little Yaakov where's the Kohen Gadol costume. That's what he was doing. So how can we take part in something which is such a huge Chilul Hashem? Yeah, maybe, you know what? And I don't want to get too far afield. Lots of controversial statements this evening. But this is like in kashrus, there's a question about what kind of establishments should have a hechsher on them. So this came up, I remember, during the whole Ben and Jerry's issue, a debate about like how bad does something have to be that a kosher certifying agency will not certify or pull a hashgacha for a non-directly kashrus related infraction. So a good distinction, I wish I could give him credit, I forgot who it was, but he's a kashrus professional. He said that there's a difference between putting a hashgacha on a product versus a hashgacha on a restaurant. When you put on the product, you're literally just making a statement about the product, not about the ideology of a company. But when you put your hashgacha on a restaurant, you're not just putting on the food, you're saying this is a kosher establishment to go to. So, if they're serving glatt kosher food, and excuse my language, and they're serving at a gentleman's club, I think it's very obvious that you can't put a hechsher on there. So that's basically what's going on in the Sudas Achashverosh. They may have been eating glatt kosher food. It may have been, chastina shechita. It may have had all of the hidurim and chumras that you could possibly think of. But at the end of the day, like, what is this Suda celebrating? The Suda is celebrating. Remember we talked about last week? Why did Achashverosh throw a Suda? Because he thought the 70 years were up and the Jews are not going to be brought back. God's not taking back the Jews. They will not be redeemed. There's no Yeshua. There's no salvation for them. And then he celebrated. And that's the Suda the Jewish people are going to come to. So, the food might technically be kosher, but the establishment, what's going on over here, is really egregious. And to take part in this ultimate form of Chilul Hashem, it's much more understandable, perhaps, according to this opinion in the Gemara, why the Jewish people were deserving of destruction, That I personally find a little bit more satisfactory than, they're eating a little bit of non-kosher food there. Eating non-kosher food's bad, but that happens a little bit more often than we'd like. Okay, now that was the opinion, by the way, the suggestion given by the students of Reish Bar Yochai. However, back into the Gemara, Reish Bar Yochai said, "In Kain, if the Isser was that they went to the Suda B'Achashverosh, in Kain Shebashushan Yahargu, Shebachol Olam Kula Yahargu." So, if so, the residents of Shushan should be put to death. Right? All the Jews were hanging around Shushan when the Jews were living all over the 127 regions of Achashverosh's kingdom. They weren't being all irregular. They weren't all traveling down to be there at the party of Achashverosh. So why do all the Jews have to be destroyed? One of the suggestions given, by the way, is Kol Yisrael Ravim Zebazeh. This is one of my favorite statements that people use, not misuse. I wouldn't call it a misuse. That'd be too strong. But usually when you hear the phrase Kol Yisrael Ravim Zebazeh, what do you imagine? You imagine a rabbi getting up and saying, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zebazeh. We are all one nation and one people. And you walk away with a fuzzy feeling about how the Jews are all one. But actually, the real original source for Kol Yisrael Arevim Zebazeh is in the story of Achan and Sefer Yeshua, right? Mark Waxel is teaching Shmuel now, but I assume that Yeshua at one time must have been taught here. So if you remember, Achan, he broke the ban and he took from the spoils of war that were supposed to be consecrated to God. So wait, why is everyone punished for his sin? The answer is, one of the answers is, well, if he knew what he was doing and we didn't stop him, then we are complicit in that sin. Kol Yisrael Ravim Zebazeh. So actually, the original source of Kol Yisrael Ravim Zebazeh is in a much more negative context, which actually fits right over here. That maybe the Jews of Shushan were the ones who actively were attending the Suda, but the fact that the rest of the Jewish people didn't blink, they didn't care that was happening, they were considered complicit in the act of their brothers and sisters in Shushan. Okay. So Amrulo, Amoratas. Okay, we give up. Tell us. Amrulahem Rabbi Shimon Yochai says, what was the sin, according to me, why the Jewish people had to be destroyed? Because they prostrated themselves to an image. Now Rashi says, what's this image referred to? The main Nebuchadnezzar. And this was a sin that they committed, and then God at this point decided to take the vengeance upon them. Now, another interpretation could be, and this one arguably could be the more obvious way to understand it, is that they bowed down to Haman, who had a tselem around his neck. So there's a whole discussion about, well, during the times of Nebuchadnezzar, you'll see right now actually, Amrlo, so if so, why is Hashem going easy on them? They committed avodah zarah by prostrating to an image of an idol. How do you come back from that? How do you do tshuva from that? The Jews should have been wiped out for such a terrible sin. Amrlahem, heim lo asu elefanim, avakadosh baruch lo asu iman elefanim, by nechsev ki lo inam milibo. So the Jewish people, when they bowed down to the idol, they didn't do so wholeheartedly. Sometimes I daven like this. I just bow down. I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing. So the Jewish people, they bowed down. That was the etiquette of what you did. But they didn't really intend to be worshiping avodah zarah. They just were afraid to be off with their heads. Now, it's interesting. What does this remind us of? A story that comes up in Gittin, that's in the book of Maccabees. We have a story with all the kids. They refused to bow down. It's like, I'll make it as if you're not really bowing down to the idol. Here, pick up this, what was the candy? I don't know, pick up something that's on the floor. It'll look like you're prostrate to the idol. No, I won't even bow down to that. So, maybe they were on a higher madrega. But the Jewish people didn't do it wholeheartedly, but maybe one could say during the times of Haman, perhaps it was. Anyway, since the Jews didn't wholeheartedly worship avodah zarah, they were coerced into doing it. It was still a terrible thing. It's still something in theory you're supposed to give up your life for, but it was done under coercion. So there's much more of a pischon peh. It's much easier to come back from that and to do tshuva for a sin that you were coerced into, even something as terrible as avodah zarah. So That was their sin. They did tshuva, and thank God we're all alive here well today because the Jews did tshuva. Okay. That brings the end of that piece of the Gemara. Any questions before we move on? Anything we can clarify in the Gemara that we just learned? Signal still good? You hear me?
Yes.
Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Okay, let's hope we keep the chazaka going. Let's continue. So there are three different places that the Suda took place in. You have the courtyard, you have the garden, and you have the actual palace area. Based on Amal. So why do I need three different places? Well, there was economy class, there was business class, and there was first class. So this is classism over here. Right there, you got the bronze, silver, and gold tiers. So get whatever muscle you want. So the people who had the higher tickets, they got to go into the palace. The next to best were in the garden, and all the people who didn't RSVP to the program and just came on the spot, they were put into the chutzner. So that's why it's important to RSVP the programs. We have a I'll make my pitch now. We have a Scott residence program coming up next Shabbos. Make sure to RSVP. Okay, I fulfilled my obligation of promoting the event now, Toby. I'm good? Maria? Yeah? Okay, good. Sign up. So they started off in the courtyard, COVID restrictions, we want to social distance. Then there was not enough room over there, so then they moved everyone to the garden. And then they're like, okay, I'm gonna, lift the mandate. Everyone can come inside and doors into the palace now. No Zoom. But the Bryce says, but Masnisa Tana Hoshiva Machatzer, similar but an alternative understanding. Everybody was in the courtyard, and then they opened up the option. Those who want to go to the garden, you have the COVID safe outdoor option. Those who want to go to the palace indoors, you welcome indoors. So you see, they were observing these guidelines before it was popular. Good. Next piece. And we're not talking about what's on your Seder plate. My chor, what does chor refer to? It's good because I'm reading through the Megillah and I'm also confused what all these things are. Rav Amar Chari, it refers to that the garments they had many holes in it. They were they were sewn in a very sophisticated manner.
Oh, there is, excuse me, Rabbi, there is a connection to the Seder plate.
Yeah.
But Rashi's explanation on the Ketona Pasim, whatever.
Let me see, where's Rashi here? Where's the Rashi? I don't have a Rashi that.
No, it's not. It's a Rashi and it's a Targum in Bereshis that the.
Do tell.
This is a Seder Dvar Torah that.
I never heard this one. I'll share it with the center.
That the Onkelos uses the word karpas in explaining the Ketonet Pasim, which was the whole jealousy and therefore the whole beginning of the going down to Mitzrayim with the jealousy among the brothers. So that's one of the reasons why we use karpas at the Seder.
Wow. So much geula, connecting Purim and Pesach together. I like it.
I'm curious to know if there's a connection to Hur, the one who held up Moshe's hands against Amalek.
Interesting. Guys, we're gonna have to write a whole Haggadah together for next year. Everyone, make your contributions now. We'll put together a publication. That would be a nice thing to do one day. Okay. So, what is Chor? Chor is Chari holes. Shmuel Amar Milas Levana. This refers to a kind of wool that was white. I said Milas like mithril. Hitzialahem. So he spread out this very fine white wool. Karpas Amar of Yossi Brachanina Karim Shel Pasim. These are cushions that are made again of a special kind of wool. So does pasim, like you mentioned before, Henry. Okay. So what we have over here we have these rods of silver, these pillars of marble, mitos sahava chesef, and these beds or couches, depending how you understand it, of gold and silver. Tani Yehuda Omer. Similar theme of classism. Haroy lekesef lekesef, haroy lezav lezahav. You know, there's everyone's equal, but some are more equal than others. So everyone gets to come to the Suda, but some have the silver level, some get the gold level. So
now we're an animal farm.
yes, thank you, Zaidi. I'm glad someone got the reference. I'm sure you all did. Amar lo Rabbi Nechemia, imke atomako kinabis Suda. But if so, if we're going to have capitalism, then there's going to be kina amongst everyone. So then, rather, what does it mean? Everyone got the same couches that were made of silver, and their legs were made out of gold. So everyone was on a level playing field. So there's a similar tension that we saw before about how do we understand Bachatzar Ginas based on Hamelach? Are we saying that there's different classes of people who got their own levels, or it's funny actually because this also ties back to the earlier Gemara we saw about what was Achashverosh trying to do over here. If Achashverosh is having his party so he can be on good terms with everyone, you would think putting people in separate classes won't really curry you favor with the commoners. You want them to stand up for you if there's a rebellion. So that's something to think about.
I think he was giving preference to the ones who were most influential, and therefore the ones who would affect the lower classes to either support him or oppose him.
Right, so his oligarchs. Exactly. Well, I guess any government society, there's always the elite. I was just watching the video from the what do you call it? The White House Correspondents' Dinner. So you basically have like
that was crazy. 2,600 people in one room. Ooh.
Oh, well, that was actually how Trevor Noah, the comedian, opened up. He's like, I'd just like to welcome you all to the biggest super spreader event of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and they have their own state, they get to do what they want, but they tell, okay, I'm going to stop now. Okay, Bahapashish. Amar Vashti, Avonim Shemis Chotatos Abal Lehen. So, what are these things that we are mischotatos about? So Rashi says, what's mischotatos? Ritzba aslahem ba'avanu chatutos. He made a floor for them that was made out of avanu chatutos. Klomar shloboli de adam elabuto reach. Shemechatin umachzirin ba'alei nachrin ad shemotzin osam b'damim yikarim. That you have to work for. You have to have amelos. You have to put tircha into it in order to make such beautiful stones. I haven't looked into it, but I'm sure there's like some sort of homiletic understanding of this with the pasuk, of course, of Amni Nezer about somebody who digs deep enough, who goes through the Sionos in order to delve and derive the secrets and the beauty of Torah. The Darv is Socharis. So what do we got? We got Dor and Socharis. Rav Amar. What does dar mean? Dari. This refers to different rows. Okay. Shmuel Amar Even Tova Yish Bekrache Hayam. There is this beautiful stone that is found in the cities by the sea. The Dara Shema, and its name is Dara. Oshiva as a Suda. And the Irlahem Gitzarayim. He brought it out in the middle of the Suda, and it's shown to them like the afternoon. This is like anyone who watched The Hobbit, it's like the Arkenstone. So the Vei Rabbi Shmuel Tana Shekara Dror Lechol Bali Skar. What is Dror? And you shall proclaim liberty throughout the land. It's the same word, Dror. And so he proclaimed liberty to all the Bali Sechora. In other words, at the end, at the end of Megillah, it says Achashverosh levied a tax. Well, where were the taxes beforehand? Achashverosh, in order to ingratiate himself with all of the wealthy merchants, like you mentioned before, he lifted taxes on the wealthy. And then I guess at the end he realized he was supposed to levy taxes on the wealthy. I guess that's what changed. There's a lot of room for political commentary here, apparently. The hashkos b'chleitzahav ukelim shonim. So what is kelim shonim? Meshunimi violation. Should say meshunim, meaning many different kinds of kelim, a variety of kelim. What does mean kelim shonim? Amar Rava yotzis labaskol v'amar lehem rishonim kalu mipnei Kaelin ba'aten shonim bahem. This is referring back to what we learned last week. Remember Belshazzar? He miscalculated the 70 years. He threw a party. He brought out the Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash, and then he died because of that. So this is a musar that's being given to Achashverosh. Meaning there's two words here. It's Kalim, like in the pasuk, but the first word means klaya, like we saw earlier in Jewish people, that they would be destroyed, they'd be annihilated. So it's asking, you think you're better than Belshazzar? Belshazzar did the exact same thing and he was annihilated. You think you're going to be any better the second time around? So that was a musar given to Achashverosh. Sure enough, as we learned, we have the whole story of Vashti, which we're going to get to momentarily, right? Everyone, this is like one of the most famous stories or Agatas on the Megillah is what happened to Vashti. That there's a lot more between the lines than the Megillah lets on. So we're going to get that, God willing, momentarily. But before that, next section, the Yain Malchus Rav. By the way, I love how we're going to focus on the word Rav, and who's the rabbi that decides to interpret that word for us? It's Rav. Anyone get a kick out of that? Okay. Amar Rav, because it should have said harbe, that there's a lot of wine. Why say Rav? So Rav explains, it teaches us that if you were 60 years old, your wine was at least 61 years old. If you're 30 years old, your wine was at least 31 years old. So your wine had to be older than you are. That's like, imagine you go to one of Erwin Niederberg, he brings out the Scotch or an 8 o'clock Kiddush, and imagine like everyone gets like a Scotch that, I guess I wouldn't get something too good, but it would still be near like 30 years. So I'd still get a solid Scotch out of that. I don't think, are there any Scotches that are like 60 years old? I think at a certain point you get like diminishing returns. Like how long can you keep it in there for? Yeah, okay. V'hashtia chedas ein ones. So my chedas, what's the word chedas mean? A das usually means like a religion, a law. Amar Achana Mishra Meir, chedas shel Torah. It sounds firmer than it really is, but they definitely wasn't done in accordance with the Torah. But what does it mean, Kedash shel Torah, that they drank wine in accordance with how the Torah commands it? Ma dash shel Torah achila meruba mishtia, asu dasa shel rasha achila meruba mishtia. Because when you have a carbon and you drink it with the wine, you have a wine libation with it, the food outnumbers the wine. I know we're comparing solids and liquids, but the food outweighs the wine that you're going to have. So similarly over here, there was a lot more eating than drinking going on, which, bad thing, good thing. You're like, we're shrugging, like, yeah, you shouldn't be drinking more wine than you're eating. That's not a good idea. So okay, maybe it's a good thing. I didn't look into different interpretations of that. In ones, what does it mean in ones? So that each person got to drink a wine from his own country, which is interesting, by the way, because you would think people want to try exotic wines from different countries. Why do I want to drink from my own? So I'll tell you a very brief story. Now I'm getting a lot of trouble tonight with all my stories. When I was in college, I did this internship program. It was like called CLIP, run by NYU's Jewish programs. And it was unabashedly a far left program, politically speaking. Like we got sessions from them on assume, like the title of one session was "Assume Gay Until Proven Otherwise." It was it was like a lesbian reform rabbi who converted Catholicism to Reform Judaism, and like she was like giving us like this, and she like gave a whole slideshow about V'Haftarecha Kamocha and B'Tselem Elokim, and that was like all of her sources. Anyway, just to give you an idea of the program. So on this program, there was actually a relatively reasonable lecture where they were talking about people who come from an impoverished background, and there are certain basic human rights, they use the term for that, to have housing, to have the ability of social mobility, etc. And then there was like one thrown in, which was culturally appropriate food. And we're like, if you are starving, we could get you like a sandwich, and like you don't eat sandwiches from wherever you're coming from, you'll be fine. It's not a basic human right that if you come from India, you have to have paneer cheese. I only know it because I checked out Rotten and I know it's called a paneer cheese. That's what I learned my shkiach experience. Like, what does that mean? But apparently, what's funny over here in the Gemara, it's like people dafka want to have wine from their own country. Apparently, there's a milah to that. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say it's a human right. A whole separate discussion about the notion of rights in Judaism. But I that's what I was thinking of when I read this line over here.
In my study, way back this past Shabbos, the thought was given that the people would be familiar with and prefer the wine from their own country because they're used to it. Now that might have been a footnote. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. That's what you're used to. It's just a funny notion because usually whenever we have all these like Scotch tasting events, I remember I went to one when I was an intern in Plainview. One of the most educational parts of being an intern for 2 years in Plainview was every Shabbos went to someone else's home and I learned about all the different kinds of scotches out there. I'm definitely far from a bucky, but I could definitely know what kind of scotches I enjoy now. So usually I remember we had a Scotch tasting event, and the senior rabbi there, he didn't drink. In fact, he was like in principle against drinking. So actually I got to go to the event and give the short Torah over there and then enjoy myself on Friday night. And so I remember like, oh, this scotch, it's a new special Japanese whiskey. Oh, it's exotic. It's from Japan. Some people like exotic drinks. Okay, I don't know what to make of it. Moving forward. Lasos karatzon ish ish. So in order to fulfill the will of each and every man. Amar Rava, lasos karatzon Mordechai v'Haman. Mordechai desiv ish Yehudi, Haman desiv ish sarvo yev. This is a very interesting line, because at least the way I was always taught as a kid, and that's certainly in line with one interpretation, one opinion in the Gemara, is that, remember we learned how to sin according to the students of Rishon Rechai, was the actual attendant of the Suda. Forget about the glad kosher food, but it was attending the Suda that was the issue. But the interesting part over here is not only is that not the issue, but Mordechai himself was actually there at the Suda. Haman was going around trying to get everyone to eat treif, while Mordechai was going around trying to make sure that everyone kept kosher. So it's interesting. You actually have two different philosophies. Someone posted on Twitter today. He was like, some yeshivish guy trying to make fun of like the modern Orthodox community. He's like, yeah, I bet like all these people, they asked their modern Orthodox rabbi for a heter to go watch the new Avengers movie during Sphira in the movie theater. And then someone's like, no, they don't. Modern Orthodox people don't ask their rabbi for a heter for these things. The rabbi goes with them. So it was like, that's for here. Like, was Mordechai at home while everybody was going to the Suda and committing Kol Davar Asur? Or did he go into the trenches with them and try to make the best of the situation and say, you know what, you're going to be here right now, you're going to be watching the Super Bowl, but let's make some brachos and eat kosher. Yeah. So that's that two different philosophies there.
Well, everything that happened there was kosher because it was under rabbinic supervision.
That was exactly the point. And there was also the hashkach of Haman Russia at the same time. So who do you want to take from? Okay. Now we're at the really fun part. We're going to do the first part of the story right now, and we'll end off not on a cliffhanger, but we'll continue with it next time. This is the story of Vashti, because you just read the Megillah and you're like, okay, Vashti, she refused to go with the king, but okay, so she got decapitated, she got her head chopped off, she's dead. But here, you can almost feel bad for Vashti a little bit. Without really knowing who Vashti is. So Chazal say, don't worry, don't feel bad for Vashti, she had it coming. And what do we mean by that? Well, listen to this story over here, and if you take Chazal at the word that this is how it went down, you can understand why we don't really have such a positive disposition when it comes to Vashti. So the Gemara asks, why it say it took place in the house of the kingship? Why it should say in the house where the women were having their Suda? Then, right? The men have their Suda in one house, the women have their Suda in another house. So I just got back from a Shabbat brachos. There's There's a whole sugya, there's a whole, like Rav Moshe Shmurach is a fiery tshuva against people sitting together at weddings and at Sheva Brachos. In fact, I forget, it's the Bach or it's the Magin Avraham. One of the Nosei Kaelin on the Shulchan Aruch says there's certain parts of the Sheva Brachos you're not even allowed to say if men and women are sitting together. I don't know who holds that nowadays, but it's interesting to know. So, based on Ashmi Vailei, you should have said the women were in their own quarters. Amarava. See, the funny thing is, you just read the Megillah on your own, you think, oh, this is really from. Achashverosh had the men in one Suda, Vashti had the ladies at another Suda, right? Even the guy, to have separate seating. No, Amarava, no. They actually were intending to sin. It wasn't like the women were in their own separate area, the men were in their own, but they deliberately put the Sudas right near each other so that at Kiddush, we don't see it at a Kiddush, we just have a regular mixed Kiddush. At the yeshivish places, like some of these yeshivish places are hard line, like there's a separate Kiddush for women, separate for men. The ones are like kind of like nishtahin, nishtaher. They have a table going down the middle, and the men kind of are supposed to be on one side, one on the other side, but then like 10 minutes later, it's a whole mishmash. It's a tarovis. Right, Toby? You see on the Five Towns? Right, because I saw you laughing over there. So
I used to see it always in Muncie.
But now it's
when
become
people
more
lived in Muncie.
So this is like what's their
Chicago.
plan? Better get them in there, but then there'll be a tarovis. Okay. But it's to say, it's like what they say that the man has deals with the big pumpkins, the one with the small ones. Basically, say that if the man is up to no good, then his wife is likely up to no good as well. That's just what Chazal say. I'm not taking any position on the matter. Bayom Hashvi Ketov Lev HaMelech B'Yayin, on the seventh day, when the king has had a lot of wine. Did it take him 7 days to drink that much wine that he finally got inebriated? What took him so long? Amarava Yom Hashvi Shabbos. Why does it say Dafka the seventh day? It doesn't mean the seventh day of the Suda per se. It means the seventh day of the week on Shabbos is when the following episode took place. Here, this like line in my Rebbeim always love to quote, especially around Purim time. When the Yidden, when you come to a Purim student and the Yidden drink and they get inebriated, they start sharing divrei Torah with each other out of their simcha. Divrei sishpachos. When the goyim get drunk, they just start, talking about what we're about to tell you. Madios knows what were all the non-Jews, what was Achashverosh and the boys talking about at their party. One was saying the women from Madai look better. The Halorim, Parsios knows the Persian women look better. Achashverosh. The kli that I use, referring to Vashti, is better than from all your other countries. And she's a Babylonian. It's kind of funny because usually we mix all of the Middle Eastern nations under the category of Sephardi, but it's like any Sephardim over here. But like within Sephardim themselves, there's like all the infighting. And like if you're from Iran, it depends if you're Vashti or from this city, you can't intermarry from an Iranian from another city. So we don't appreciate all these nuances, but apparently that's what they were debating over here. So Amrlo, so we're talking LaRosa. Do you want to see her? Amrlo in. However, she has to come out nude. So now the Gemara explains why did this all happen. This is mida keneged mida. Because what you do, God sends right back to you. You get what you deserve. She would take these Jewish girls, she make them work on Shabbos without clothing. And Achashverosh, remember, all that was done to Vashti and the gezerah that was put upon her. Why did the Megillah have to say Asher Nigzar Aleha? We know what happened to her. That which was done to her. And she got killed. What do you mean Asher Nigzar Aleha? Keshem Sha'asasa, just as she did to others, Kach Nigzar Aleha. So too was Nigzar. It was decreed upon her as well. And that's why it all took place on Shabbos as well. Because it was on Shabbos that you would make the Jewish girls take their clothing and disgrace them and work on Shabbos. So to her Mida Keneged Mida, just desserts came back on Shabbos for her as well. And Yom HaShvi, that she too was asked to come out without clothing. And that's ultimately what brought Vashti's downfall as well. Mida Keneged Mida. So let me just point out one thing over here. I think it's the Ben Yehoyada. So this is like a weird dialogue, by the way. You know, like I understand it's like, you know, it's locker room talk and everything, but it's like a really weird dialogue. No? Achashverosh says, well, my woman's better than all your women. And then they're like, oh, bring her out. What's going on over here? It's like, you know, this is I mean, you can say in Hachinami, it's just locker room talk. But the Ben Yehoyada says there's actually more of a thought process going on over here. I'm not justifying this, right? I'm just explaining it. What was going on in the mind of these people when they asked him to tell Vashti to come out? What was going on was when Achashverosh said, do you want to see her? What they were concerned is that they too would have to bring out their own wives as well. And yeah, what were they afraid would happen? That if Achashverosh liked one of their wives more than Vashti, he's the king. He'll just take her for himself. Therefore, they basically were bluffing him. They were saying, oh, well, we know he's not actually going to do this. Say, yeah, well, you have to bring her out naked. Even he wouldn't be stupid enough to make a request like that. However, Achashverosh called their bluff, and he did try calling out Vashti in the end. But why would they make such an egregious request? Because they were hoping that he actually would back down at that point, that he would fold. Achashverosh did not fold, and that's how we have Vashti's ultimate demise. So I thought that was actually like, I like the thought process that they gave to them. They're actually trying to save themselves, and that's why they dared him. It's an interesting take on the story. Okay, that's all I got for you guys. Any questions before we conclude? Crazy Gemara, right? I told you, a little bit more engaging than a bunch of mathematical calculations.
Yeah, that was a lot. Interesting.
It was very fun. That was a good one.
Yeah,
Yep.
Well, and we continue the story tomorrow, God willing. That's tomorrow, next week, Paneer Cheese. So thank you all for your flexibility on joining at 8:45 tonight and changing last minute. God willing, we'll be back to 7 o'clock. That way we could all get a proper night's sleep. Okay, have a wonderful Shabbos, everyone.
Thank you. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos, everybody.
Good job.